Good morning. Welcome to the English version of our radio show Para Ser Legal to Be Legal.
Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.
So there was a study by Syracuse University. They looked at all of the cases where people were detained from 2001 to 2019. So for the past 18 years. In all 50 states. And they provide some analysis and some interesting information that we get from that. But before we talk about the article, I need you to understand what the process looks like. So what is an immigration bond? How do I get it? What are the factors that the judge is going to consider in giving you a bond? So first of all, there's two ways that you can find yourself in ICE custody. One, you got arrested or jailed for whatever reason. It might be a mistake. There was an order of arrest, but it was for someone else, not for you, and then they transferred you over to ICE custody. Or it could be that you were convicted of a crime, you served your jail sentence, and during your jail sentence or at the conclusion of your jail sentence, you were transferred over to ICE custody. Secondly, you could just find yourself in ICE custody. It might be because you're trying to re-enter the U.S., and there was a problem in some criminal record or something, and because of that, you were put in removal proceedings, or ICE came to your home, to your job, on the street, and put you in removal proceedings. So those are the two common ways: jail detention or direct contact with ICE. Now, once you are detained, historically, the ICE officer would first see, okay, you're a U.S. citizen, are you not? What's your status? Are you here on a valid visa? Did you overstay a visa? Are you undocumented or illegal now? They do that analysis. And then they say, okay, you're illegal. You overstayed your visa. That would have been my situation. Or like some of my clients, entered without permission, so never had legal status to begin with. Whatever the reason is, today you're undocumented, and ICE puts you in removal proceedings. So now the ICE officer is going to look at and say, okay, are you eligible for a bond? That's number one. If you're not, you're subject to what's called mandatory detention. When does that happen? Well, if you've already been ordered, removed, or deported from the U.S., you're not eligible for a bond. If you have certain criminal record, like for an aggravated felony, for example, possessing drugs with intent to distribute, or serious criminal charges that you were convicted of, crime of moral turpitude. It could even be a shoplifting in some cases. So depending on what your criminal background is, the officer will decide, are you eligible for bond or are you not? If you are eligible, the officer can either choose to release you on your own recognizance. That means he just lets you go and expects that you're going to appear to court on the date and time that they tell you to do so. And the last option is they're going to give you a bond. Now, bond is just a nice way of saying bail in the criminal world. It just means that you have to pay a certain amount because they fear you may not present yourself to court. So if you've paid $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, chances are you're going to appear in court because you want that money back. It's a security to your conforming to their expectations that you're going to appear in court when you're told to do so. Now, today, ICE doesn't really release you on your own recognizance. ICE doesn't even put a bond amount anymore. Every one of those go to a judge. And depending where you're detained and when you're detained, there's a difference between Atlanta, California, New York, New Jersey, for example, or Oregon. It might take you anywhere from 2 to 6 to 8 weeks before your first appearance with a judge. That's the first opportunity the judge could have to make a decision on whether you're entitled to bond or not. And what happens if you're not prepared to file for bond that day? The judge will adjourn it. You could be waiting another 2 to 6 weeks for your second appearance. So you could be detained 3 months before you even have before a judge could even decide, are you eligible or not? Should you get bond or not? Now, when you make the application The judge's principal concerns are: one, are you a danger to the community? And two, are you a flight risk? So criminal record, you're a danger to the community. Not a lot of, you just entered the U.S., you don't have family here, you don't have long ties, you might not present yourself to court, so the judge may or may not give you bond. Now, there's about 10 or 11 factors that the judge will typically consider to decide, are you a danger or are you a flight risk? I'm going to go over some of them. There is no individual factor that outweighs all the rest. The judge will review the totality of the circumstances. You may have some factors and not others, and will decide, well, are you eligible? And if so, how much? So, and as you'll see later in the program, this under the Trump administration, a lot has changed. Ironically, the law hasn't changed, but the way it's applied has, because Trump has severely limited the discretion that immigration judges have. They can't close cases like they used to. They can't remand cases back to immigration to make certain decisions. So everything is backed up. There are more people in removal than ever before, and the judges have less authority than ever before. So it's challenging times to be an immigrant and in removal proceedings. Here are the factors. One, do you have a fixed address in the U.S.? Are you moving every month, or have you been here for 10 years and the last 8 were in the same address? How long have you lived in the U.S.? Did you just come into the U.S., or have you been here for 5, 10 years? What roots do you have put down here? Do you have family in the U.S.? There's a big difference between the person who has wife, kids, siblings, parents with legal status or without, hopefully more with than without, versus the person who's here by himself, not married, no kids, or his wife and kids are back in his home country and he's here alone. If he's here alone, greater chance that he might not present himself. This is the way the judge looks at it. If he has wife and kids, more likely that he's not going to just pick up and disappear. 4, employment history. Yes, we understand that those that are illegally here in the U.S. or undocumented don't have permission to work, but there's a recognition that, if you're living here, you have expenses, you got to pay for it. Chances are you're going to be working for it. So what's your work history look like? Number 1. Number 2, have you paid taxes? Very big deal for some judges. It really depends on the judge. For others, taxes is just proof of the time that you've been here in the U.S. For some, well, everyone has the obligation to pay taxes. So you don't get a benefit for doing so, but some judges view it very negatively if you are not paying taxes, particularly if you have children here and they're getting benefits or assistance from the government. They see that in a very negative light, particularly now under this administration. So what's your employment history? 5, what's your record of appearances in court? If you've been arrested 5 times and you never show up to court, a judge might look at that and say, well, if I release you, what's the chance that you're going to show up to my court? What's your criminal record? Were you arrested? Were you convicted? What were those convictions for? So it may not automatically disqualify you, but it might make you dangerous to the community. For example, if you have pending charges for sex abuse of a minor, you're going to have a really hard time getting bonded out. You're going to have a really hard time for a judge to give you a bond of any amount. What's your history of immigration violations? Have you applied for some form of relief in the past? Have you lied to an immigration official? How many times have you come to the U.S.? Were you ever caught for any of them? How did you enter the U.S.? Legally or illegally? Have you made attempts to flee prosecution? Meaning ran away from the police, didn't show up to court. What's your relief from deportation? Meaning, do you have a way to achieve legal status in the U.S.? My wife's a U.S. citizen, or my girlfriend's a U.S. citizen. We've been together a year and a half. We were planning on getting married. we were saving up money for it. We had already chosen the date, but before we already contracted the wedding hall. But before that could happen, I was picked up by ICE. Okay, so the plan is to get married, and she's going to petition for me. That's an avenue. Versus, I don't know, Your Honor. Well, judges don't like to hear that because the judge will just give you an order of removal.
I became an attorney to give others the information that I didn't have. I want them to know what their rights are. We're immigrants for immigrants. Almost everyone that works for us is either an immigrant or a child of an immigrant. We believe that an educated client is the best client. They should know what their rights are. Nothing compares to giving somebody legal status because their entire life has now changed. We get you, and we're here for you.
And 11, pay taxes. So no one factor is the deciding factor, but there are some that are important, like family in the U.S., criminal record, relief from deportation. Judges really pay a lot of attention to those. And if you have relief and you have no criminal record and you have family in the U.S., chances are you're getting a bond. How much really depends on where in the country and what judge you have. Talking about that, so immigration bond. Now that you know what an immigration bond is, now that you know how to get released from detention, let's talk about Syracuse University and the study that they've conducted and are still conducting. So they looked at all deportation cases from 2001 to 2019 in all 50 states. They broke it down by state. They broke it down by ethnicity, by country of origin. They looked at the information and said, what can I conclude from this? And there was some interesting conclusions, which let me explain. So first thing that caught my attention is they said Indians, and here I don't mean Native Americans, I mean India, from the country of India, and Chinese immigrants get bond 80% of the time. I said, wow, that's high. That number really got my attention. And they compare that to Mexicans that get approximately 50% of the time get bonded out. Indians, Chinese 80%, Mexicans 50%. Why is that? Well, what they explained is when they looked at the cases is Indian and Chinese are here less time. They've been in the U.S. a shorter period of time. Well, you would think that'll be a negative, but what they say is here shorter, less likely to have a criminal record, less likely to have been charged for anything like a DUI. Now, immigrants historically commit crimes at a lower rate than native U.S.-born citizens. That's true, study after study. But despite that, the longer somebody is here in the U.S., the more likely they had contact with the police, particularly if you're driving without a license, because like in New Jersey, you can't get a license if you're undocumented and have no legal status. So things like that cause interactions. And those interactions sometimes result in convictions that can have negative consequences. Now, they also showed that Indian and Chinese pay several $1,000s more for each bond than Mexicans. And again, the reason why they explain that is since they're here less time, they have less ties to the U.S. Chances are they don't have a family. Maybe they have employment history, maybe they don't. But there's a big difference. Someone who's been here for a year and a half as a student and is accused of a crime, and because of that now is in removal proceedings, versus someone who's Mexican and has been here for 15 years. Now, why am I focused on Mexicans? Because they are the single largest group, but to be honest, they're not the largest group of immigrants coming in the past 10 years. It's Indian and Chinese. Mexicans has dropped off dramatically, but those that are here have been here for many, many years. Lately, in terms of Spanish-speaking immigrants, more of them come from El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, than from Mexico proper. But obviously those from El Salvador, Nicaragua, Honduras cross through Mexico to enter the U.S., predominantly through the southern border. So Indian Chinese here less time, get bond at a higher amount, and they pay higher bond amount. Let's talk about New Jersey. From 2001 to 2019, there were 56,194 bond motions. Of those, 29,019 were granted, so just over 50%, and 27,175 were denied, just under 50%. And when you look at groups, where are they from? Number one is Mexico, with 7,589 petitions. El Salvador came at number two with 3,020. Guatemala, 2,580. Honduras, 2,021. Dominican Republic, 1,895. And Ecuador, 1,875. So Spanish-speaking, large percentage of the bond applications in the past 10 years. But even so, that's 10, 13, 15, 16, 17. Honestly, it's about a third in total. Now, looking at it historically, the report compared what were the numbers in 2001, what were the numbers in 2017, 2018, and to some extent 2019. But since it's too early in 2019, I'm really ignoring that for now. We are only a couple of months into the year. Not enough to determine any trend or any significant change. 2001, the median bond. That's not the average. That's just the median. So the median for those, well, my daughter is in 6th grade math, so I've had to relearn what a median is. But essentially, they plot all the numbers, what were the amounts for each one, and they look at which are the ones that are closest to the middle. So 2001, the median bond was 5,000. Remember, minimum is 1,500. 2017, now under Trump, median bond is 10,000, 2 times as much. In this program a couple of weeks back, we talked about the detention of rapper 21 Savage, who was born Sharia Benjamin Yosef, if I recall the name correctly, born in UK, grew up in Atlanta since he was 7. He was released on $100,000 bond, even though he had pending relief. He had filed for U visa before he was detained, and he had no criminal record, meaning he was arrested. ICE thought he was convicted of drug possession, but those charges were dismissed. Ultimately, they were reopened and dismissed. So he had no convictions, and still $100,000 bond, huge amount. Most clients can't pay that. He could. In 2001, the number of bonds was 8,748 in the entire year. In 2018, 13,004. So not quite double the amount, but the median amount clearly has doubled. Now, again, that's median. That means look, I'm seeing bond amounts of 15,000, 20,000, 30,000. It is harder than ever. And unlike in the criminal context, you can go to bail bondsman, you put down 10%, bail bondsman puts the rest 90%. In the immigration context, that's not the case. You have to put 100% of the amount. There is no such thing as a 10%. So some people with a high bond can't pay it. They stay detained. Not fair, but it's the situation that we're in today. Now, to illustrate the difference between 2001 and 2019, where we're in now, I'm going to give an example of 2 clients. Now, I changed their names, but the facts are the same, of Eduardo and Roberto. They both entered within a couple of years of each other. They've both been in the U.S. more than 10 years. They both qualified for cancellation or removal for non-green card holders. So they're both seeking the same relief. They both have criminal record. And I want to illustrate the difference before Trump and after Trump so that you get a sense of just how much things have really changed. Again, The law of immigration has not changed. The way it's implemented has dramatically changed. Immigration courts are part of the executive branch, which means the Department of Justice sets down rules and guidelines for immigration judges. Under Trump, judges don't have discretion to close cases. What I mean is administratively close a case, to terminate proceedings. They don't have the discretion that they used to have. They also very rarely will remand the case from court to immigration. For example, let me give you the scenario. Oh, one more thing. And any application that's denied today by immigration results in removal proceedings. So let me give you the example. I'm an immigrant. My wife's a U.S. citizen. We have 2 kids. She files for me. At the interview, for whatever reason, she can't make it. Rather than the officer giving us a new date and giving us an opportunity to do that, denies it. That's in his discretion. I don't think it's appropriate, but let's just assume that I get a real jerk of an officer. He had a bad day, and he says, screw you, I'm denying your petition. So now I'm placed in removal proceedings. I'm going to go in for an immigration judge. In the past, I would say, Your Honor, I have this pending petition. You know, the relationship has been approved. Please remand to immigration so that they can adjudicate my change of status. Judge today doesn't have that authority. So instead, we're going to have a trial in front of a judge where he's going to decide, is my relationship legitimate and am I admissible into the U.S.? Now, because of the dockets, that could take 2 or 3 years. It's not an efficient use of the judge's time or of the government's time, particularly since immigration makes those decisions every day. That's what they're used to doing, and now they're preventing from doing so. A silly scenario, but I've seen it happen, and that's what's going on now. So laws haven't changed, just how they're applied.
I became an attorney to give others the information that I didn't have. I want them to know what their rights are. We're immigrants for immigrants. Almost everyone that works for us is either an immigrant or a child of an immigrant. We believe that an educated client is the best client. They should know what their rights are. Nothing compares to giving somebody legal status because their entire life has now changed. We get you, and we're here for you.
Now, let's talk about Eduardo. So Eduardo entered the U.S. around 2004. He was caught at the border. He was sent back, not deported, just released. Married to a lawful permanent resident, green card holder, but they're separated. They have 1 U.S. citizen child together, but since the separation around 2011, he really has no contact with her. He also has 3 or 4 DUIs. I say 3 or 4 because the immigration judge thought he had a 4th one, and he says it wasn't him. So he believes 3. Judge thought 4. Now, in 2011, when he was getting separated from his wife, he was pulled over twice for DUI in the same town within a month. He hired an attorney. The attorney told him, "Look, you got to be convicted. He really wasn't a good attorney, but you go to court, you're going to be convicted, and you're going to go to jail, and the sentence is 6 months." So Eduardo, hearing that, decided, I don't want to go to jail, so I'm just not going to go to court. So the judge issued a bench warrant for his arrest. 2016 comes around. He's a passenger in a vehicle. Police officer pulls over the driver of the vehicle, asks for names of everybody in the car, and discovers that Eduardo has an order of arrest, arrests him. He then goes and pleads guilty to those 2 DUIs. He's jailed for 6 months, and then he gets in ICE custody. He files for bond. And so remember what I said. 2011 charged, 2016 pled guilty. He failed to appear for 5 years. And he has 3 DUIs. Judge thought he had 4. What happened at the bail hearing? Judge gave him a $10,000 bond. I mean, that is a success story by any accounts, even in 2016. That's a big deal, getting a 10,000 bond with that number of convictions and having already not appeared for 5 years. So not every judge would have done that in 2016. This particular judge did. Now let's talk about Roberto. Roberto entered the U.S. 2004. He has a United States U.S. citizen daughter. He's not married, but he's been arrested 8 times. January 2005, he presented a fake document. He was charged with that. It was reduced to a municipal ordinance, which is a civil matter, not criminal. June 2005, he was arrested for possessing a knife. It was downgraded to a municipal ordinance, also, again, not criminal. The conviction is not criminal. May 2006, domestic violence assault, charges dismissed. Fourth arrest, February 2013, domestic violence assault, charge dismissed. December 2016, entering property without permission was reduced to a local ordinance. In conjunction with that was an assault for domestic violence. That was dismissed. In September 2017, assault. Sorry. So in December 2016, right, that was the assault. In September 2017, another charge for assault, which was dismissed, but this time he got transferred to ICE custody. So at ICE custody, we filed for a bond for him. At that time, he was arrested 7 times. 6 of them did not result in a conviction. The 7th was pending at the time and had not been adjudicated yet. Judge gave him a $15,000 bond. The government's attorney appealed it. 6 months later, the Board of Immigration Appeals sustained the appeal, meaning they overturned the judge who granted bond. They said, listen, he has a pattern of violence. He didn't provide any affidavits from any victims saying to the contrary. He's a dangerous person. He needs to be detained. He doesn't deserve to be released, and they revoked the bond. Now, he wasn't detained right away. The September 2017 assault charge, we got dismissed. January 2019, he gets arrested again for domestic violence. And today, it is much harder for him to get bond. But look at Roberto and look at Eduardo. Eduardo failed to appear for 5 years. According to the judge, 4 DUI convictions, $10,000 bond. Roberto, arrested 7 times, 7. 0 convictions, $15,000 bond, and the appellate court overturned it, saying he's a danger. That arrests alone are sufficient to determine that he's a danger to the community. Now, I 100% disagree with that decision, but we were not retained to do the appeal. We did not fight the appeal. The client never responded to the appeal. So the court really only heard the government's case. But even still, the court had more than enough information to deny the appeal and should have. But the point is, here we are today, somebody with 0 convictions but a lot of arrests, and court saying he's not entitled to a bond, whereas somebody with 4 DUIs just a year before got a $10,000 bond. That's to give you an understanding of how difficult it is today. If you're charged with a crime and you're an immigrant, you got to talk to an immigration attorney. You need to review your options before you plead guilty or found guilty. So thank you for listening to this program. My name is Andres Mejer. If you want more information, our number is 888-888-0307. If you want a copy of our book, To Be Legal, just contact us at 888-888-0307 or on Facebook, Andres Mejer Law, or on our blog. Thank you for listening to the program. Please like our Facebook page and share this video with anybody you think it would be of help to. Thanks again. Till next time.
Calificas para ser legal, quieres saber, solo llama al abogado Andrés Mejer.